Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to another video. Unfortunately today I'm just in a field, but the last couple of days I've been walking and filming all over Exmoor National Park. It's been a rather wonderful experience and I'll be sharing that with you in different videos. But today I wanted to talk about hiking in the UK in general. Whilst I have been doing my walking over the last few days, I've sort of been thinking about the different tips and advice that I would give people coming over here to do day walks or even multi-day walking. And that's what this video is. Basically, I've not got 10, but I have 11 key points that hopefully you guys will be able to take away as some food for thought. And when you come here, you'll be able to have a much deeper and enhanced, richer experience of the United Kingdom. So starting with tip number one, this is something to do before you even get here. So it's a little bit of research, basically to explore why you're coming to the UK. So have a proper like sit down conversation with yourself, like, right, why am I coming? I'm coming because I want to walk this trail. Okay, so you've narrowed it down to a trail. Well, what I would encourage you to do is really do some detailed research into that trail, into like key sites that you're going to be walking through, key historical areas. Here in the UK, we are so blessed with an amazing depth of archaeological and historical sites, and the history we've got going on here is absolutely mind-blowing. So I would just encourage you to do a little bit of research ahead of time so that you have a greater awareness of the history of the places you're going to be walking through. Maybe a museum that you're going to be nearby has a piece of some old Viking boat, or a village that you're going to be staying in was the site of some old battle. Anything like that. It's just really great to really help connect you to the landscape and to our past. So I'd certainly encourage you to do a little bit of research into that. But if history and archaeology isn't perhaps your thing, then maybe wildlife is. So again, just sort of do a little bit of research into the areas that you're going to be coming to. What's the sort of key wildlife to see? Are there any endemic species? So species you can only see in that area. Quite often we have a lot of endemic flowers and butterflies as well. So it's quite nice to be able to spot those things when you're out and about. Or maybe you're coming to see our bluebell woods. I've got a few bluebells coming out behind me, but right over there's an epic bluebell wood, but it's very busy in there, which is why I'm not filming there today. But if you're coming to see the bluebells, you know, not every forest has bluebells in. Or maybe you're coming to see the red squirrels. Well, not every forest is home to red squirrels. So it's just sort of doing a little bit of research ahead of time so that you can weave your way to those places and hopefully, as I say, maximize the different things that you can see and experience during your time here in the UK. So that's my first tip. Tip number two is kind of building on tip number one, but in one key area, and I think it's a very important key area. It is food. So if you don't already know, United Kingdom is separated down into England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, and then each of these areas is broken up into counties. Now most counties have some cuisine, some piece of food that they are famous for. So you have Cornwall with the Cornish pasty, of Lancashire with the Eccles cakes. Love a good Eccles cake. You've got Yorkshire with the Yorkshire pudding. London is famous for fish and chips, although that is most commonly eaten on the coast nowadays. But sort of figuring out what those sort of key things to eat are can be, again, a wonderful way to connect with the culture and with the history of the land. Take Cornish pasties, for example. Why do they exist? Well, they were developed around the mining industry, when the wives would bring together the scraps of the food from the evening before and they'd wrap it in some pastry with a massive thick crust so the miners could eat their pastry and hold on to the crust, and so they wouldn't get their grubby hands all over the decent stuff inside. So just knowing that when you're eating a Cornish pasty and sort of reminiscing the days almost, especially if you're eating that on the southwest coastal path right by some of those tin mines, it's quite a surreal experience really to help connect you to the land and to the culture and to the history, as I've already mentioned. So definitely delve into the sort of cultural side of food. The other thing with regards to that is pub grub. So we have a bit of a pub culture here in the UK, or certainly we did. Many of our pubs, so our inns, basically, you know, people would finish work and they'd go there, and that'd be a very communal place. People would converse, they'd swap news about the day, they'd talk politics, they'd sports. But many of our pubs, especially in the more rural areas, are sort of closing down just because, you know, work life is 24 hours a day these days and people just aren't necessarily living that same culture. So if you are going to be walking past an inn or a pub, again, I would encourage you just to stop and, you know, have a drink, have something to eat, just to support the local economy, but also have a chat with the people that work there, because it's always incredibly surprising how locals can be such a little pot of knowledge. They have such an insane breadth of history that they know about. You know, some inns on Dartmoor, for example, they've had a fire burning for over 100 years, and they can tell you about, oh yes, this winter was our harshest winter, and this happened, and this summer the prince came to visit, or something like that. It's just really nice to sort of get up to date with how life has been in these places. So that's the other side of that. So that's my second tip. So definitely just explore food and try different things, you know. Even if you don't like it, you can say you've tried it. One thing that's just come into my mind is Marmite. If you've never tried Marmite, you basically either love it or hate it. And the other thing is scones. The big debate here in the UK, if you can get your hands on a cream tea, do you put jam first or do you put cream first? But you know, they're great conversations that we actually have. So just explore the food. So that's my second tip. So my third tip is, again, something you can do before you actually land yourself in our country. And that's basically to plan ahead with regards to accommodation, especially if you're staying in a building. So maybe a B&B or a hotel or a hostel. If you're coming over during the summer or in some kind of holiday season or on a bank holiday, and most accommodation gets booked up quite quickly. So I would just encourage you to book ahead as much as possible with regards to your accommodation, and hopefully that'll make life a lot simpler. If you are backpacking, and I mean solely backpacking, you do not have a vehicle with you and you rock up to a campsite, generally you will be accepted onto that site regardless of how full up they are, because most campsites acknowledge the fact that that's all you have. That you literally, if you can't stay at that campsite, then you're going to have to find somewhere else, and that means walking, and if it's late, they're not going to do that. So that's the one exception with regards to booking ahead, I would say, is backpacking. But then again, I would still encourage you to ring ahead to the campsites just to check that they know that you're coming and they can make sure there's space for you when you do come. So that's accommodation. That's tip number 3. Tip number 4, and I'm surprised it's taken me 4 tips to get to this conversation, to be honest, but I want to talk about the weather. We are obsessed with the weather, and I believe rightly so, because it is constantly changing. Especially on the coast and the mountainous regions, our weather is very unpredictable. You might be forecast a really hot sunny day, but then later on there might be hail showers. It's very unpredictable. It just doesn't tend to know what it's doing. Even though the forecasts, you know, they have some level of reliability, don't necessarily rely on them. So I would just encourage you to be prepared for the weather. The old Scout motto, be prepared. So that means have enough insulation layers, and that means definitely invest in a decent quality pair of waterproof top and bottoms. So make sure you know how to look after these pieces of kits, and that hopefully make that investment that little bit more worthwhile, and if you're coming from a warmer country, again, I would just encourage you to have enough insulation, perhaps even more than you might feel is necessary. The other day I was up on Exmoor, as I've already mentioned. I was walking in 20 degrees on the top of the moor. It was a really sunny day, you know, still early spring, but it was hot. And then I went down into the valley, and in the night it dropped down to -4, and there was a really heavy frost in the morning. So it's just you know, be considerate of the fact that things get cold and things get warm quite quickly. 20 degrees to us in Britain is generally quite hot, or certainly for me. So, you know, and again, with the wet weather, we're notorious for our drab grey days where it's just drizzly and pretty miserable. So again, just make sure you're prepared with your waterproofs for that. So that's my tip number 4. Tip number 5 is coming back to the weather, but with regards to how to camp in wet weather. So this is not necessarily a necessary thing to do, but it's a quite helpful tip, hopefully you'll find. Basically, if you're going to be camping and you have a tent that pitches inner first, if you're pitching in the rain, so you're finding it's drizzling or it's raining, and you're trying to pitch the inner part of your tent first because that's how you pitch it, then that's going to get wet, and then that's going to mean the inside of your tent is wet before you can get that outer on. So I would encourage you to buy or at least rent a tent that pitches outer first. Maybe it's just me, but I'm constantly pitching up when it's raining, and to be able to just whip the outer up and then dive in and put the inner up inside and get everything dry is just such a helpful thing. So it's just something to consider. It's not, you don't have to do that. You can certainly be skilled enough to put your inner up and not get everything wet, but it does make life a lot simpler to have an outer pitching first tent. So that's tip number 5. Now tip number 6 is, we're sticking with camping for a bit. It's basically to know where you can actually wild camp if you're going to be wild camping. So basically to know the law. it's become quite a popular thing here in the UK actually to do wild camping, but in theory, in practice, the only places you can wild camp are on Dartmoor and pretty much all of Scotland. That being said, a lot of people, you know, you can get away with wild camping above the tree line in places like Snowdonia in Wales, the Lake District, the Peak District, so you can get away with it there. But I think a lot of people are starting to sort of wild camp in farmers' fields, in just woodlands, and whilst I don't really have a problem with it, I do have a little bit of a problem with it. It's not necessarily my issue here, but I would encourage you, if you're planning to do a trail and to wild camp, just do as much as possible seek permission of the landowners. I just worry because there's a lot of irresponsible people out there who are doing this whole wild camping thing for fun because they want to just get out and about, but they're not respecting the land, they're not sticking to the countryside code, and that's also part of this tip, is to know that countryside code. I think as outdoors people, we have a great responsibility to be an example to the rest of society with how to respect, protect and engage with the natural world. So if we're going out there and we're camping and we're leaving litter, or we're having fires where we shouldn't be having fires, and then leaving that fire smouldering, and just generally not respecting the land, I really don't think that's a good thing. So if you're going to be wild camping, basically I would just make sure you know roughly where you're going to be wild camping, and know roughly if you can, and do be prepared to be asked to move on if you're camping somewhere unofficial. And then if you're just out and about walking, again, just be aware of that countryside code. I think most of us have it sort of inbuilt within us to respect the landscapes that we're walking through, and that pretty much sums up the 6 points or 9 points or whatever it is of the countryside code. But do familiarise yourself with those things, you know, shut gates, pick up litter if you find it, you know, respect the locals, keep your dogs on leads. So they're just things to consider. So do check those out, and hopefully again that'll just help. You know, if you make the decision to not wild camp somewhere where someone else is wild camping because you know it's disrespectful, or you've not got permission, or there's potential you could damage that landscape, then credit to you. Like, walk around with your head held up high, because it's so easy to go, oh well, the land isn't owned by anybody, like it should be free for all to use. And I agree with that, but the sad truth is, especially in our country, which is full of people, it is owned by people, and we do need to respect it, especially with heavy footfall. So I'm going on a lot here, but something I'm very passionate about is quite simply just respecting the land, and trying to keep a good relationship with the people who own the land. So, you know, wild camping, countryside code, get to know those things. That's tip number 5. Tip number 6, let's come right back around to weather. So this is kind of like not necessarily a tip, but it's definitely advice. If you walk past somebody when you're out and about on the trail, be prepared to say hi. So you always say hi. And then the second thing is definitely be prepared to stop and make some comment about the weather. So whether you say, oh, it's a little muggy today, or oh, the weather doesn't know what it's doing, or oh, it's a lovely day, you know, something like that. That's basically just how all conversations start. So that's just something I prepare you for. So it's really nice to be polite and just have a quick conversation with people that you're going past. I like to just sort of ask, oh, you know, where are you headed for today, or where have you started, and just get that bit of conversation going. And it's nice because people can be like, oh yeah, we've done this circuit and we saw these Highland cows, and you'll be like, ah, I like Highland cows, I'm gonna go that way. So have a chat with people as you walk past them. That's my 6th tip. Be friendly, be approachable, and always say hi. Even if they don't say hi back, set an example once again. Tip number 7. So this is quite exciting. Basically, if you're coming to the UK, you probably have seen that we have OS maps, so Ordnance Survey maps, and these are just mind-blowing fields of information. Not only do they help you navigate and know where you're going, but they help you see the lay of the land, and again they can help you to connect with the land. So I would just suggest that you learn how to use an OS map, so an Ordnance Survey map. You know how to use a compass. If you're fine with your navigation, then that's great, but I would just still have them on you, maybe even on your electronic device, because you can look at them and you can see like, oh look, there's a tumulus up there on that hill. So that hill was probably once a prominent point for this individual who was buried here in, I don't know, the Iron Age or the Neolithic period. So it's just quite nice to be able to see those things, to look at the map and see sort of the relationship of how the land could have been used in prehistory or other, you know, periods of times. Like, oh look, I'm walking past a manor house, I wonder what significance that is. Oh, I just googled it, it's the Prime Minister's estate, or something like that. So again, just keeping those OS maps on you just helps sort of help deepen your connection with the land that you're walking through. So my eighth tip then, this one's a little bit random, but basically we are obviously a modern and civilized society, but, and this is a big but, when you're in the more remote places, especially sort of in the depths of the national parks, what you'll find is there isn't any internet, and that tends to limit businesses' use of card machines. So if you're going to be backpacking especially, keep plenty of cash on you, and definitely split it up in case anything happens, but keep cash on you. That is the key point. So many of these smaller businesses, the little shops, the pubs, I went to a cafe the other day in Exmoor and all I wanted was a cream tea. Paying on card wouldn't work, their internet was too slow, so I had to pay by cash. So just make sure you've got plenty of cash on you, and hopefully that'll stop you running into some trouble there. So we talked about these businesses not having any Wi-Fi for their card machines to work, but tip number 9 is related to phone signal. So again, if you're walking out and about in the UK, make sure somebody knows your rough itinerary, roughly where you'll be, when you'll perhaps be in touch again, because much of the national parks, especially in the sort of valley areas, there is not any, and I mean any, signal coverage. So 3 days I was just up on Exmoor and I had no phone signal. I just kept my phone off. But I know that area well enough to know there is zero, it looks like that, zero phone signal. So just again, make sure someone's got your itinerary so that if anything happens, they know roughly where you are and life is good. Okay, so my final tip is basically to do with insects and poisonous animals. So some of you guys might be coming from countries where there's all sorts of things that are out to get you. But here in the UK, the only poisonous animal that we have that perhaps might threaten us is the adder. And if I'm honest, it's not so much a threat, it's more of a privilege to see an adder because you just don't see them. If you do, it's just obviously keep make sure there's enough space between you and the snake, but just admire it, because to see an adder, it's a great privilege, and you're so unlikely to get bitten. So just be aware of that. But basically, now I'm going to flip that on the head. This is what you do need to be aware of. So we have plenty of midges, mosquitoes, although they don't have malaria, so just be aware of that. We have ticks, so ticks right now are just coming into season. I had a massive one on me the other day. And the other thing is horseflies and clegs. So basically these are massive, really clunky flies that land on you, and you don't know they're there until they bite you, and then you're left with this massive itchy swelling, and it's horrible. But they're so like dopey, you can just like whack them and they just don't respond. So those are the things to be aware of. So midges, especially up in Scotland, mosquitoes generally around sort of water areas. Midges and mosquitoes, they're just annoying more than anything else, and they can just come in big numbers and just try to get you out of their space. Ticks have the potential to carry Lyme's disease. So it's so unlikely that you'll get Lyme's disease, but if you get it, you just don't want Lyme's disease. So do everything you can to prevent that by, wearing longer sleeves, longer trousers if you're going through bracken and high grass or sheep country. So, be aware of ticks, and make sure you check yourself at the end of the day. Remove the whole animal. If you do get a tick, maybe have a tick remover on you so you know how to get it off. And yeah, coming back to the clegs, they're just not very nice, really. Being bitten by them is not an issue, other than the fact it's itchy and it's horrible, and you don't want that to get infected, obviously. So those are the things to really be aware of. So yeah, just appreciate adders if you see them, but otherwise there's nothing else really that's poisonous that's going to get you, so don't freak out about that. So I don't know, that's my 10, 11 sort of tips for you guys coming over to the UK for the first time to hike. If you have any other tips or pieces of advice that you'd like to share, please pop it in the comments below. This is a great sort of chance to share, get conversation going. We're all passionate individuals, we all want to see each other, get outside and have a great time. I am such an advocate for this beautiful country with so much to offer in terms of diversity of landscapes, culture, history. I just absolutely love it, and I really hope that you'll enjoy it just as much as I do when you come to visit. So thank you very much for watching this video, guys. I'd love to hear from you. Where are you going to go? What are you going to see? Pop it in the comments below, and until next time, enjoy your adventures and stay wild.